I'm Leslie Dynaberg, and I'm here with Academy Award-winning producer Michael Deeley, author of the new book, Blade Runners, Deer Hunters, and Blowing the Bloody Doors Off My Life in Cult Movies. So Michael, let's talk first about Deer Hunter, which you open the book talking about sort of your pleasure in being nominated and winning the Oscar for producing that film, but that the actual making of the film was one of the more unpleasant experiences of your career. Can you tell us about that?
It wasn't the making of the picture that was so tough, really, although it was a hard picture to make in the jungle and that sort of stuff. It was the aftermath of it when we came to the cutting. But I had a big battle with the director. I wanted the film about 20 minutes shorter, half an hour shorter. He didn't. He just loved wallowing in his own beautiful shoot. And I lost the battle. The universe went with him, not with the producer. That happens.
And looking back, I mean, it was a Best Picture award winner, so obviously there was a lot of merit to the film, but do you still stand by wanting it to be shorter?
Oh yes, absolutely. The merit to the film, the merit of the film is really its strength and its gutsiness. It's not really the ethnic wanderings around Pittsburgh, which occupies the first hour instead of the first half hour, which it should have been. I mean, it would have been much better shorter. We previewed it shorter, it was better. But hey, that's okay, I'm not complaining too bitterly.
Yeah. And can you talk a little bit about the road to getting that film made?
It took a long time. I bought the script about 3 or 4 years before it actually got made. I hawked it around the studios the way one does or did, and they all turned it down and said nobody wants to see a picture of Vietnam. It's too tough a thing for Americans to want to watch. And anyway, what do you know about it? If you're English, you don't know anything about American troubles. And so I just put it in a drawer for a while, and then eventually when I got to the point where my company had been absorbed into a bigger company and I had the ability to greenlight pictures, I then greenlighted this one. So I got it made. It still was quite controversial when it's made, but it worked out.
Yeah, and you talked about, in your book, it was very fascinating to me, talking to Dustin Hoffman at one point about that movie.
No, actually not that movie.
Oh, not that movie,
no,
I'm
that
sorry.
Was Blade Runner.
Okay, okay.
No, it was always De Niro. De Niro was the absolute linchpin of this movie. He made it happen, he coached the actors, he created the entire atmosphere himself, amazingly, really good.
Yeah, well, it's definitely an amazing film. I occasionally still have flashbacks of those Russian roulette scenes.
Right.
So, let's also talk about, you talked about The Godfather as sort of the one that got away.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that?
I was working on a picture with Peter Yates, who I'd done a film with called Robbery, quite a good film. And the picture we were working on was called Murphy's War, and it was at Paramount, and the script was dull, and it wasn't getting any better, let's put it that way. Okay. And eventually the boss of the studio, Bob Evans, called me and said, look, I'm not that keen on this project, but he knew he was committed to a pay-or-play deal, which meant that we would get paid whether he made it or not. He said, why don't you do something else? And he said, I've got a book here, it's just come in galleys, read it and see what you think. I took it home and I read it non-stop, it was riveting. And I was really excited about it. And I went to see Peter Yates, the director, and asked him to read it. And he did after a few days. He said, no, I don't really fancy this. I've just done a crime picture, he just made Bullet, which is quite a piece of work. And he said, I just don't fancy it. I said, you sure? He said, oh, yeah, I don't want to do it. Let's stick with Murphy's War. So I went back to Bob and said, Peter Yates doesn't want to do it, so we're going to stick with Murphy's War. Which was probably the happiest, luckiest day of Paramount's life, because the picture that came out wasn't anything like the picture we probably would have made. I think it was a lot better. So they were lucky to escape that with Godfather.
And are there any other movies that you had the opportunity to be involved with that you regret passing on in retrospect?
There's one. A long time ago, the writer came to me with his first book, and it was about the attempted assassination of General de Gaulle, the president of France at that time. And it was quite gripping and very nice sort of thing. It was called Day of the Jackal. And I turned it down and said, look, it explains to the writer why he was wrong and I was right. And I explained to him that we couldn't possibly have a suspense picture about a man who may or may not be shot because the man's walking around the streets. I mean, he's still alive. And he said, oh, I see, oh, yes, okay, all right, oh dear. And off he went. And somebody much smarter than me picked it up, and because he realized the film wasn't about killing General de Gaulle or not killing him. It was about how the plot was thwarted. And that picture, Dare the Jacket, was a great success.
Absolutely.
Would have liked to have made it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and I would imagine it's a whole different creative process bringing a book to life as a movie versus something.
It is a very different thing. A book, I mean, people often disparage a movie because the book's so much better. The book is a much more complex and in a way satisfying construction. I mean, the writer can say what somebody's thinking. That might be quite hard to do on screen, you know. So dialogue tends to muddle up and explain things. It's much harder. Books are a nice medium.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Speaking of books, if you're interested in getting an autographed copy of Michael Deeley's new book, Blade Runners, Deer Hunters, and Blowing the Bloody Doors Off My Life in Cult Movies, you can go to Noozhawk.com and order an autographed copy on our website.